So, you're thinking about buying a home in 2026? Good. But listen up, because a single mistake could cost you more than a brand new car. Seriously. You might be thinking that waiting for some big crash is the smart play, or maybe that your pre approval letter is a golden ticket. Well, you're probably wrong. The rules have totally changed. Over the next 30 minutes, we are going to do a deep dive into the 4 critical errors that are going to separate the winners from the losers in this next housing market. And I'm going to give you the exact playbook to make sure you come out on top. Now, before we jump into that first fatal flaw, if you're serious about mastering this market, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not going to want to miss these explainers.
All right, let's get right into it. Here's our game plan. First, we're going to lay the groundwork and talk about the new reality of the 2026 market. We're calling it the market plateau. Then, we'll break down the 4 big mistakes, one by one, trying to time the market, falling into the affordability trap, making what we call the instability play, and then the big one, reckless risk transfer. And don't worry, we're going to finish strong by giving you the Prepared Buyer's Playbook. It's your guide to not just getting by, but actually thriving in this crazy new environment. Okay, let's set the stage here. If you're sitting around waiting for a huge market boom or, on the flip side, some catastrophic crash in 2026, you really need to reset your expectations. What we're actually walking into is something much more complex, a challenging plateau. You can think of this new reality as a giant tug of war. On one side, yeah, interest rates are expected to settle down a bit, which sounds great. But on the other side, they're settling at a level that keeps things historically tough for millions of buyers. This is not the wild anything-goes market of 2021, and it's for sure not a repeat of 2008. This is a totally different animal, and it needs a totally different strategy. And that right there is the key. The old rules, the stuff that worked 5 years ago, it's not just outdated, it's actually dangerous now. Buyers who are still using that old playbook are the ones who are going to get hit hardest by the mistakes we're about to cover. The winning strategy for 2026 has to shift away from just hoping for the best and move toward hardcore financial discipline and being super careful about managing risk. To win in this new era, you've got to be more strategic, more patient, and honestly, just plain smarter about how you buy a home. Now check this out, because this slide tells a really interesting story. Just look at the forecasts from the biggest players in the game. You've got a pretty solid consensus that 30-year fixed rates are going to be hanging out right around the 6% mark. Now, that's a little better than the peaks we've seen, but it's a completely different world from those 3% rates that so many people just can't seem to forget. But here's where it gets really wild. Look at the home price forecasts. NAR thinks prices will jump a solid 4%. But then you've got Fannie Mae, and they're way more cautious, predicting only 1.3% growth. That huge gap tells us 2 things. 1, nobody really knows for sure. And 2, the 2026 market is going to be incredibly local. What happens in Austin could be the total opposite of what happens in Cleveland. But here's the one thing they all agree on. Prices are not crashing. They are still going up. And that leads us perfectly into the first, and honestly the most common and expensive mistake buyers are going to make in 2026, trying to time the market. This is what we call the fatal flaw of inaction. It's that tempting idea that if you just wait for that perfect moment, the perfect rate, the perfect price dip, you'll somehow beat the system. In this market, that's a guaranteed way to lose. At its core, this mistake is all about psychology. It's driven by 2 really powerful emotions that are, frankly, just wrong. First, you've got this lingering hope for a massive market collapse, like 2008 all over again. But the data just doesn't back that up. Like we just saw, all the major forecasts are predicting price growth, not a collapse. The supply and demand situation is completely different now. Second, there's this emotional obsession with the 3% mortgage rates from 2020 and 2021. And experts are all saying the same thing. Those rates were a once-in-a-generation thing, fueled by crazy pandemic policies. They're not coming back anytime soon. Chasing that ghost is just going to lead to some serious financial regret. This quote from Evan Harlow just nails it. It's the perfect summary of what happens in the real world. While you're on the sidelines, frozen, waiting for a crash that isn't coming, the market is just moving right along without you. Prices are going up, and your buying power is shrinking every single month. Look, this isn't the stock market where you can just click buy in a split second. Finding the right house, negotiating, getting financing, that all takes weeks, sometimes months. The idea that you can perfectly time all of that is a total fantasy. For pretty much every homebuyer, building wealth through time in the market is always going to be trying to time the market. So let's just do the cold, hard math of waiting, because this slide really puts it all in perspective. Imagine you're eyeing a $400,000 home today. You think to yourself, you know what, I'll wait a year. Maybe rates will drop by 0.5%. Okay, fair enough. Let's play that out. During that year you're waiting, let's be conservative and say home prices go up by 3%. That's right in the middle of what the experts are predicting. Well, the price of that exact same house just went up by $12,000. It's now a $412,000 house. So you have to borrow $12,000 more. Your down payment just went from $80,000 to over $82,000. And that tiny bit of money you might save from a slightly lower rate, it's completely gone. In fact, it's dwarfed by the fact that you're now borrowing way more money. You waited to save a buck, but you ended up paying way more for the exact same thing. That's the real cost of waiting.
So if avoiding the waiting game is rule number 1, then rule number 2 is understanding what you're actually signing up for. And that brings us to mistake number 2, the affordability trap. This is the huge and sometimes devastating mistake of focusing only on the mortgage payment, while getting completely blindsided by the giant and fast-growing hidden costs of owning a home. There's a huge difference between affording the monthly payment and actually being able to afford the home. I want you to just look at this number for a second. $15,979. Let that sink in. That is what the average American homeowner pays every single year on top of their mortgage. That's an extra $1,300 a month that so many buyers just completely forget to budget for. And you know what the scariest part is? These costs aren't sitting still. They are going up faster than people's paychecks, jumping almost 5% in the last year alone. This isn't just some small line item in your budget. For a lot of people, this is the thing that turns the dream of owning a home into a cash-strapped nightmare. So where's all that money going? This chart lays it out perfectly. We call it the PITI plus M model. That's principal, interest, taxes, insurance, plus maintenance. Now, most of the online calculators and even the lenders, they only ever talk about the P and the I. But look at the rest. Property taxes, that's over $3,000 a year. Homeowners insurance, another $2,000. But the massive, overwhelming piece of this pie, the one that shocks everybody, is maintenance. Almost $11,000 a year. That's everything from a new water heater to a leaky roof to your AC unit dying in the middle of summer. Not budgeting for PITI plus M is exactly how you end up house rich and cash poor. And trust me, that's a stressful place to be. Now let's just zoom in on that insurance slice for a second, because in a lot of places, it's turning into a full-blown crisis. What's happening in Miami is basically a warning sign for the rest of us. A 72% jump in insurance costs in just 5 years. And it's not just Miami. New Orleans is up 79%, Atlanta 58%, Sacramento 59%. These costs are just exploding in areas that are at high risk for climate events. Not to mention inflation and the rising cost of building materials. Insurance isn't just some small, predictable fee anymore. It's a huge, unpredictable expense that can literally get you denied for a loan or break your budget years after you move in. And this is exactly the kind of local stuff where having a pro on your side is a game changer. Look, navigating this is tough, and having the right team is so important. We've actually put a link in the description to help you connect with a top-tier real estate agent in your area. And to protect the family you're buying this home for, there's also a link to check out life insurance options. If this has been valuable so far, please share it. Now let's get to mistake number 3. Okay, this leads us right into our third huge mistake, the instability play. This is a mistake that's made by the buyer who's done everything right up to this point. You know, they didn't try to time the market, they budgeted for the whole PITI plus M payment, and they got that coveted pre-approval letter. They think they're at the finish line. But then they make this catastrophic mistake of thinking the deal is done, and they end up blowing up their own finances right before closing. This is the question that trips up so many people who are otherwise really smart. You're pre-approved, you found the perfect house, your offer was accepted. What could possibly go wrong? The answer is everything. That time period between when you get pre-approved and when you actually close, when you're in escrow, that's when your finances are being looked at under a microscope. It's when you're the most financially vulnerable. Lenders don't just approve you and then forget about you. They do one last super thorough check of your credit, your income, your bank accounts, and your job, sometimes just hours before you're supposed to get the keys. Any big, unapproved change can and very often does kill the entire deal at the very last second. And that brings us to what I call the 7 deadly financial sins. These are the things you absolutely cannot do between pre-approval and closing. Let's run through them. 1. Changing or quitting your job. Lenders need stable income they can verify. A last-minute job switch, even if it's for more money, can torpedo your loan. 2. Making big credit purchases. Don't go buy a new car or finance a bunch of furniture. That instantly changes your debt-to-income ratio, or DTI, which is a key number for lenders. 3. Applying for new credit. Even just applying for a Target card dings your credit and can mess up your loan. 4. Co-signing a loan for someone else. Now, legally, their debt is your debt in the eyes of the lender. 5. Making any late payments. This is a huge red flag. 6. Moving large amounts of money around without a paper trail.
lenders have to know where every penny comes from. Big cash deposits are a deal killer. And 7, this is the one that surprises people, paying off and closing old credit cards. It can actually hurt your score. The bottom line is this: your finances need to be in a state of suspended animation. Don't change a single thing until after you have the keys in your hand. And this brings us to our 4th and final mistake, and it's a really dangerous habit that kind of became normal during the crazy bidding wars of the last few years. We're calling it reckless risk transfer. This is when you waive critical buyer protections, also known as contingencies, just to try and make your offer look better to a seller. And look, while that might have felt necessary when you were up against 20 other offers, in the more balanced market of 2026, it's a totally unnecessary and potentially devastating gamble. Let's focus on the one that gets waived the most, and it's probably the most dangerous: the appraisal contingency. So what is it? It's a super important clause in your contract. All it says is that if a professional appraiser decides the home is worth less than what you agreed to pay for it, you have an out. You can either walk away and get your deposit back, or you can go back to the seller and try to renegotiate the price. It's basically your financial seatbelt. It protects you from overpaying for a house based on emotion. It's the market's reality check. Now, when you look at the pros and cons here, it's just so heavily stacked against the buyer. On the left, sure, waiving the appraisal can definitely make your offer look better to a seller. No doubt. It takes some uncertainty off their plate. But just look at the right side. The risks are just catastrophic for the average person. If you waive this and the appraisal comes in low, you have to make up the difference in cash. They call this the appraisal gap. So on a $500,000 offer, if the house only appraises for $480,000, you have to magically come up with an extra $20,000 in cash right now on top of your down payment. In a market that's only growing slowly, paying a $20,000 premium means you're starting off day one significantly underwater on your investment. It could take years just to break even. This is a risk that only the wealthiest, most experienced buyers should even think about taking. Okay, we've just spent a lot of time breaking down the 4 big mistakes that are going to cost people a fortune in 2026. But knowing what not to do is only half of it. Now we're going to flip the script. We're going to take the solutions to those mistakes and turn them into a proactive, empowering game plan. This isn't just a list of things to avoid. This is the Prepared Buyer's Playbook. This is how you get a real strategic advantage and buy your next home with total confidence. Here it is, your 5-step checklist to get this done right. Step 1, get your finances dialed in and get a fully underwritten, verified pre-approval, not just some quick online pre-qualification. This means you submit all your paperwork up front so your approval is rock solid. Step 2, calculate your real costs. Build a budget for the full PITI plus M payment. Call around for insurance quotes in the neighborhoods you're looking at. Assume you'll spend 1 to 2% of the home's value every year on maintenance. Don't get surprised. Step 3, lock it in. Once your offer is accepted, lock your interest rate. That gives you certainty and protects you from any last-minute market swings. Step 4, keep your protections. In this market, there is just no good reason to waive your inspection or appraisal contingencies. They are your best friends. Use them. And step 5, think long-term. The days of quick flips are over. Buy a home that's going to work for your life for the next 7 to 10 years, not something you hope to sell for a quick profit. The real money in real estate is made over time. So, what's the bottom line here? Winning in the 2026 housing market isn't going to be about getting lucky or taking crazy risks. It's going to be about discipline, preparation, and deliberately avoiding a few huge unforced errors. You have to stop trying to time a market that can't be timed. You have to budget for the total, real cost of owning a home. You have to protect your financial situation like a hawk after you're pre-approved. And you absolutely must hold on to your contractual protections. In this new era, the smart buyer, the one who prioritizes safety and due diligence over hype, is the one who's going to win. You have the playbook now. The next move is yours. If this explainer helped you get ready for that move, please do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with somebody you know who's thinking about buying. And don't forget to check out the links down in the description for help finding a top agent in your area or getting that life insurance you need to protect your family and your new home. Thanks for watching.